Let me start with a question. How many of you think that the worst of the crisis is behind us? Okay, let me ask it differently. How many of you think that the worst of the crisis is in front of us? Okay, a vast majority. I asked the same question 10 days ago in front of a room full of financial journalists. I got the same response. It's interesting because when you read the media, the financial press, it's all about green shoots and it's all gone and everything is fine. And I find it intriguing that you don't believe it. A second question. How many of you think that unemployment is going to be a growing issue for the foreseeable future? Anybody who doesn't believe it? We have two people. All right. I think I chose the right example because I'm going to address these issues. Why you're right, why the majority of you is right. What's going on is a structural crisis. What we have been told about, what governments are doing, is very simple. They have been trying to deal with saving the banking system at huge cost and relaunching the economy, i.e. stopgap measures. No structural action. Second, unemployment is going to be a big issue. It's going to be a growing issue worldwide, but also here in Europe, in the United States. And the last time we had to deal with an issue of that scale was the 1930s. We didn't do very well. And the only solution we ended up finding out was a war. I think we have actually a big challenge of finding a better way. And action is now. And what I hope to tell you today is there is a solution, and we don't have to wait for anybody to start implementing it. We actually have the power to do so ourselves. So these are the three key points I want to make. The plan is very simple. There is a structural cause. What is it? What is the structural solution, and what do we do about it? Let me start with a story. I give you a car, and it doesn't have brakes, and the steering wheel is not quite reliable, and I'm sending you across the Alps to Italy or across the Rockies to California. Do we agree you'll have an accident? Okay. However, when you have the accident, the reaction will be, what a terrible driver. Mr. Greenspan, Mr. Bernanke, what a terrible driver you are. Or, gee whiz, look at those road maps you're using. They're out of date. The curve in which you actually made the accident wasn't even on it. Good Lord, no wonder you had an accident. So let's update the maps, let's do in some regulations, fine-tune a little details, put on a new tire, and off you go again. Guess what will happen? Another accident. Well, actually, we've been doing this for a while. What we're living is number 97 in the last 25 years in banking crashes, and number 176 in monetary crisis. This is not my statistics. This is World Bank statistics. So at what point do we have to kind of say there is a problem with the car? You know, do you have to wait for 99? Why not, wake up? We're dealing with a structural issue. Structural issues require structural answers. not stopgap measures. The evidence for what I'm going to be showing for what the structural cause is comes from very unexpected domains. It comes from complexity theory, and it comes actually from the study of natural ecosystems. My colleague, Babulanovic, who as his name indicates very clearly is American, right? He's with the University of Maryland, and has spent 25 years in quantifying, measuring how biomass moves through networks in natural ecosystems, Chesapeake Bay, the Amazon, Serengeti Plain, whatever. In other words, what we're dealing with is you have the sun coming in, you have plants growing, you have animals eating plants, you have animals eating animals, we eat it all, and what does that make, right? And what he discovered is that a sustainable network has some very specific characteristics. It requires, and we can start with that, the fact that an ecosystem, a natural ecosystem, has to be sustainable to be around, right? We've been trying for a couple of million years before it got there. So, you know, the ones that were not sustainable are not going to find today, okay? And the sustainability, which is the capacity to survive, to actually thrive and flourish in a different environments, different contexts, different challenges over time. That's what sustainability is. Depends on a balance between two key variables: efficiency and resilience. Now, and we can measure that with a single metric. That's what the breakthrough is. Until now, when we talk about sustainability in any field, we're dealing with a bunch of indices, right? Because we really don't know. You know, we can't say this system is 98.5% sustainable. You know, you kind of have indications that there are things a bit, you know, that look a little more sustainable than another, right? Now we can do this. That's the breakthrough. And it applies in any network, any complex network. So let's show what he found. You have two key variables, efficiency and resilience. Efficiency is the capacity for a system to process quantity of biomass in an ecosystem. Okay? In other words, throughput. Resilience is the capacity to survive, to adapt to a drought, a fire, changes in the environment, whatever. So these are the two variables, and the weight between the two, the importance, is shown by these two volumes. Now, I mean, this is a little too cute. In fact, the reality is we're dealing with a little range here. It's not that one precise point at 100%. You go to about 97, 98, 6.5% on both sides. You know, so it's kind of, you know, not one point. There's a range, but it's a narrow range. That's important. And the weight is there. Okay. Apply the same concepts, and I'll tell you in a few minutes why the same concepts do apply on an economy, on a financial system. We are putting all the weight on efficiency. It's the only thing we know. When a bank sinks, what do? It's big enough, we save it. If it's not big enough, there's a big one that absorbs it because it's going to be more efficient. The reason we have a monopoly of a national currency is because of efficiency. The reason for Milton Friedman's comment that we needed a more efficient system globally was efficiency. And that's why we needed to dismantle all the regulations. So we know only that variable. Now, no prizes for anybody who guess what will happen to that system, right? It will do ping, right? Or plof. That's what a crash is. We've done it a number of times. Now, why can we measure this? There are two variables that are structural. The emphasis is on structural, i.e. they depend on the nature of the network, that explain both the efficiency and the resilience. One of them is diversity, and the other one is interconnectivity. What are we talking about? Diversity is how many different animals are around. Interconnectivity, what Who can eat what? Okay? Now, these things are structural, I repeat and emphasize. That means that any network, any complex network, can be measured in the same way. All right? It doesn't depend what passes through it. It is biomass, say, in an ecosystem. It's electrons in an electrical circuit. You remember the big blackouts in electricity here in Europe, Northern Europe? The half of the United States going blackouts? What they were doing was this. Engineers know about efficiency, don't they? That's what I was taught. Information in your immune system. Every one of us has that complex network in ourselves. And some of the diseases we're dealing with, like AIDS and cancer, were so tough to deal with, or precisely because that's where they lie. They deal with the immune system, which is a network. And finally, last but not least, money in an economy. It is the same structure. Now, what are we dealing with? Low diversity, monocultures, right? We know that a match in that stuff can the whole thing go, right? Low interconnectivity. Pandas are very cute. However, they have one big problem. They eat one type of bamboo. If you don't have that type of bamboo, you're in trouble. Compare that with a natural rainforest or a squirrel. A squirrel will eat anything, including strawberries that they normally don't find in a forest. So, what is the structural solution? Now we've gotten clear why that relates to what we talked about and why it applies to our money system. The answer is complementary currencies. Something that sounds strange. Particularly if you had a course in economics, you never heard of it. Okay? Because of course we have a monoculture of one single currency and couldn't need any other else. Complementary currency is anything that circulates, that's standardized, that circulates in parallel with conventional money. So, miles are an example. Okay? They're a different type of medium of exchange. And all currencies, all complementary currencies, link unmet needs with unused resources. An empty chair with loyalty. These are loyalty currency examples. There's just one example. They're not the interesting ones, but you're all familiar with it. There are hundreds of thousands in the world right now. More interesting are the ones that are actually changing behavior patterns in a positive sense for societal purposes. And that's why I'm going to be focusing on unemployment. And that's one, create a currency that actually will deal with unemployment. Now, the first thing to understand is unemployment is not General Motors. That's, there's a lot of news when you have 9,000 jobs being disappearing from General Motors. However, when 10,000 businesses, small and medium-sized businesses disappear, nobody is there for the burial. Now, 70 to 90% of all private employment is in that little sector that nobody knows how to support. The problem is cash flow. Why? I'm a small business. When I buy something, I have to pay cash, or at best 30 days. But when I sell something to a big company behind that curtain, okay, then I pay 90 days or 120 days. So as I try to grow, I'm strangled. I go to a bank, the bank says I'm not interested. Because, I'm not a good client, I'm not a profitable client. It's a lot of work and little profitability. The answer is currency that actually breaks the bridge. How does it work? And back to being the small little enterprise. And behind the curtain, I have, say, the government that I just sold something to, and it will pay me in 90 days. The next thing I do is I get an insurance. I'm part of that network, the C3 network, which is called commercial credit circuits. By the way, this is not theory. It exists in Brazil, it exists in Uruguay. I'll talk about it in a second. I get an insurance on my invoices. What happens? I can now pay one of my suppliers, you. What do? you have a choice. You can either request from a bank to get conventional money and get out of the system, or you can pay one of your suppliers. But if you want national currency, you pay the 90-day interest and the bank fees. I don't. So you have an interest in actually spreading it around to the rest of our community here. So that is the mechanism. What does it do? It actually injects working capital at zero interest to all the participants in the network. Now, in Uruguay, they did the right thing. The key thing is acceptance in taxes. That is how the monopoly of money is enforced. So by having the government accept taxes payable in that currency of that network, that will become national currency in 90 days. Remember, 90 days later, I'm getting paid, and everybody who had those units gets national money at no interest cost. So we have a very dynamic system. Conclusions. For policymakers, that's what you need to do if you want to address unemployment. Help the small and medium-sized business sector, and you'll get that problem licked, as you do in Uruguay. And if you do that, you actually get additional income that otherwise wouldn't have happened. It doesn't cost anything to the government. They're not requiring subsidies. I claim that complementary currencies are today exactly in the same field that open source computers programs and microfinance were 10 years ago. Very few people heard of it, and if they heard of it, it's marginal. It has changed. This will change. It would be crazy to believe that we're going to go into an information age and the most important information system, our money, will not change, which is the hypothesis that everybody works under. Now, for net citizens, I think we have a choice. We can either stick to the monetary status quo, and it gets a little overloaded, or we can hatch our little wagon on something that we'll design for the 21st century. For those of us who are part of a small and medium-sized enterprise, don't wait for Big Daddy to save you. These systems can be started at any scale. The software is available in open source. You can download it free on the net. You can start your own system. Talk to your suppliers. Talk to your customers. Create your own network and get going. We can save employment. Structurally, this will work not only for the crisis, this will work forever in a completely different economy, because we actually have a way of injecting working capital exactly where it's needed. Successful businesses, small and medium size, because they are successful because they have invoices. If it's a stupid product, a stupid service, they won't have invoices. This is the mechanism. So, thank you.